There are levels to wealth, and the strange part is, the very rules that helped you climb to one level, that quietly start working against you the moment you step into the next. It sounds simple, almost too simple, like something you've heard before, and just nodded along. But if you slow down for a second and actually sit with it, it starts to feel uncomfortable. Because what it really means is this: the habits that got you here, the way you learned to protect every dollar when you didn't have much, might be the exact things quietly putting your future at risk right now. And if that doesn't fully sit right with you, if there's a part of you thinking that doesn't make sense, good, that's where you're supposed to be. Because what comes next is the part almost no one explains. So stay with me. And if you're ready to actually see this clearly, not just hear another surface level idea, take a second, hit subscribe. Because once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it. Most people believe money becomes dangerous when you don't have enough of it, when things feel tight, when you check your account before buying something small, when you stand at a counter, doing quiet math in your head, over something that shouldn't even matter that much, when every expense feels heavier than it should. That's where people think the risk is. That's where they think things fall apart. But the truth is, that's not where the real danger lives. The real risk begins later. Much later. It begins at the exact moment things finally start working. When your income increases. When your accounts start looking better than they used to. When you open your banking app, and for the first time in a long time, your chest feels calm. No tension. No panic. Just control. And you start to believe, I figured it out. You're no longer guessing. You're progressing. That's when everything begins to shift. Not all at once. Not in a way you can clearly point to. But quietly, subtly, almost invisibly. The same habits that once made you feel safe, the same patterns that helped you build from nothing, start creating blind spots. And the worst part is, you don't even know they're there yet. And the more you have, the more expensive those blind spots become. At first, you don't notice. In fact, you feel better. You check your accounts. They look solid. You look at your investments. They're growing. You tell yourself you're smarter now. More careful, more disciplined, more aware. But underneath that feeling, the structure holding everything together is still fragile. And wealth almost never disappears because of one obvious mistake. It doesn't collapse in a single moment you remember forever. It doesn't explode in a way that gradually, almost invisibly. It happens when you keep playing by rules that no longer apply. But you don't realize they've changed. And that's where people get stuck. Because from the outside, everything still looks right. You earn more. You save more. You invest more. Month by month. Year by year. There's progress. But underneath, you're not controlling the system. You're reacting to it. Reacting to markets. Reacting to news. Reacting to whatever everyone else is paying attention to that day. A headline breaks. A chart moves. Someone says something with confidence. And suddenly, you feel like you need to act. Every decision feels logical. But they're disconnected. One here, another there. No real structure tying them together. No system protecting you when things don't go your way. And slowly, something starts to feel off. You check your accounts more often. Refresh the app, even when nothing has changed. Look at your investments, without knowing why. And questions start showing up. What if something goes wrong? What if I lose this? What if I'm not as protected as I think I am? And those questions don't come from failure. They come from awareness. Because deep down, you can feel something. You just don't understand it yet. And once you start noticing that pattern, everything changes. Because this was never just about how much money you have. It's about how well your system is built to protect it. And if that system doesn't evolve as your wealth grows, the risk doesn't stay the same. It compounds, quietly, until it's too late to react. And that's where everything begins. At the level where you feel the safest, but you're actually the most exposed. Level 1. Illusion of control. At the first level, everything feels clean. Simple. Almost. Comfortable. You manage your own money. You make your own decisions. You decide what to buy, when to sell, what to hold. Maybe it's late at night. Laptop open. A few tabs running. Charts. News. Maybe a YouTube video playing in the background. You're trying to piece things together. Trying to make the right call. You learn. And because there's no one between you and your money, It feels like control, real control. And in a way, it is. But there's a layer you can't see yet. Because every decision you make is shaped by the information you have, and even more, by the information you don't. You react to what's visible. A chart moving, a headline trending, a story everyone is talking about. And in the moment, there's no coordination, no alignment between your investments, your taxes, your legal exposure, your long-term plan. Everything exists in separate pieces, and you're the one holding it together until something unexpected happens. A market shift, a sudden expense, a tax bill you didn't see coming, a loss that feels bigger than it should. And when it hits, you absorb everything. That's the hidden cost of this level. Because control doesn't mean protection. It just means you're close enough to feel like you understand what's happening until something reminds you that you don't. And if this feels uncomfortable, like you're starting to recognize yourself in this, that's not an accident. Because what comes next is where most people start making decisions that look right, but slowly work against them. So stay with me. And if you want to see how this shifts at the next level, subscribe. Because this is where it starts showing up in your numbers. Level 2, dependence on advice. Eventually, you reach a point where doing everything yourself doesn't feel efficient anymore. Not because you're incapable, but because things are getting heavier, more complex, more connected. The stakes feel higher now. The margin for error feels smaller. So you bring someone in, an advisor, someone who understands what you don't fully see yet. And at first, it feels like relief. Real relief, like putting something down you didn't realize you were carrying. You're not alone anymore. There's a plan, a structure, a path you can follow. Instead of waking up wondering what to do, you now have answers, and everything feels calmer, more stable, less emotional. Your portfolio looks cleaner, more balanced. You stop chasing and start following a process. And for a while, it feels like you've leveled up, like you finally get it. Level 3. Misalignment you can't explain. But then, something subtle starts to shift. Not all at once, just small moments. A recommendation that makes sense, but doesn't feel right. A strategy that works on paper, but doesn't quite match your reality. A decision that feels slightly off. Not wrong, just not precise. At first you ignore it, because the advice you're getting is built on models, on averages, on systems designed to work for most people, and that's exactly why it works. But also why it doesn't fully fit you. Because you're not most people. You're a specific situation, with specific risks, specific timing, specific goals, and slowly, you start to feel that gap. Moments where things aren't broken, but not optimal. You gained guidance, but you lost a layer of control. And that tension doesn't go away. It grows. Because as your wealth increases, everything becomes more complex, more variables, more moving parts, more decisions affecting each other. And at some point, you realize something uncomfortable. Advice alone is not enough. You don't just need someone to guide decisions. You need a system that connects them, something that holds everything together, something that ensures every move supports the next. And that's when everything starts to change. That's when you stop thinking in individual decisions and start thinking in structure. Level 4, building structure. At this level, things start to feel different in a way that's hard to explain at first. You're no longer relying on one person. You start building a system, an accountant who understands your numbers, a lawyer who understands how to protect what you've built, an investment specialist who focuses on performance, maybe even someone focused purely on risk. And for the first time, things begin to connect. Your decisions aren't isolated anymore. They don't live in separate boxes. What you do on the investment side starts aligning with your tax strategy. Your legal structure starts supporting how your assets are held. Your risks start being managed intentionally. And when it works, it feels powerful. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet control. Like things are finally moving together. Like you're no longer reacting, you're designing. And that feeling is addictive, because for the first time, it actually feels real. Level 5. Complexity you didn't expect. But with that control comes something you didn't fully anticipate. Complexity, not the kind you can ignore, the kind you have to manage. Because now, there are more moving parts, more conversations, more opinions. Your accountant sees one side, your lawyer sees another, your advisor sees something completely different, and none of them see the whole picture, which means alignment isn't automatic. It has to be created, maintained, protected, and that changes your role completely. You're no longer just making decisions. You're coordinating a system. You're translating between perspectives, making sure everything moves in the same direction, even when each part is speaking a different language. And that takes effort, a different kind of effort, the kind that doesn't look intense, but never really turns off. Level 6, the cost of control. And then you start to feel the cost, not just financially, but mentally, time, energy, attention, because better protection requires better structure, and better structure requires more people, more coordination, more decisions. You feel it in your calendar, more calls, more reviews, more things that aren't urgent, but still matter. You feel it in, and that's when something shifts again. A realization that doesn't hit all at once, but builds quietly. You don't actually need to control everything, because controlling everything creates its own kind of risk. The more everything depends on you, the more fragile the system becomes. Because if you step away, even briefly, things drift. And that's not stability, that's dependency. What you actually need is a system that holds itself together. A system where things don't fall apart just because you're not watching. Where alignment exists by design, not constant effort. And that's when your thinking changes again. From managing to designing. Level 7. Global risk you can't see. And just when you start to feel stable, the environment shifts. Because once your wealth crosses borders, the rules change again. Up to this point, most of your risks were internal. They came from your decisions, your structure, your execution. If something went wrong, you could trace it, fix it, adjust. But now, the risk expands beyond you, into systems you don't control. And suddenly, protection isn't just about what you own. It's about where it exists, how it's structured, how it interacts across systems. You might be diversified across assets, but still exposed to a single country, a single regulatory environment, a single point of failure you didn't fully account for. And that's where the pressure increases. Because now, even if you've done everything right internally, external forces can still change the outcome. Policies shift over, tax rules change, currencies move, quietly reshaping everything underneath you. And none of that is under your control. So your system has to evolve again. Your thinking has to evolve. Diversification is no longer just about assets. It's about systems. Level 8, generational fragility. And then, there's one final shift. The one almost no one prepares for properly. Because eventually, the question changes. It's no longer about how you protect your money. It's about what happens to it when you're no longer the one protecting it. And this is where the pattern shows up, over and over again. A lifetime of building, careful decisions, discipline, structure, like it will just continue. And then, one generation later, it starts to fall apart. Not dramatically, not in one moment, but quietly, because the system holding it together was never designed to exist without you. The next generation doesn't see what you see. They don't feel the same risks. They don't fully understand why the structure exists the way it does. And slowly, things drift. Priorities change. Discipline fade. Structures get nothing breaks. Everything still looks fine. But underneath, alignment is gone. And over time, the erosion shows up, faster than it was ever built. Because without governance, without rules that survive you, even the strongest system becomes fragile. And that's when everything finally comes together. Wealth doesn't disappear because people suddenly become careless. It disappears because the system was never built to survive them. And once you see that clearly, you don't think about money the same way again. You stop asking, how do I make more? And start asking, what is this actually built on? Because the difference between building wealth and keeping it is everything. And most people realize that far too late. So if this made you look at your own situation a little differently, if you're starting to question how protected you really are, then stay here, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which level you think you're in right now. Because the moment you can see your level clearly is the moment things actually start to change.